Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us today, whether it's in person or virtual. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Eric Cervantes. I'm with Investment Consulting Services. With me is Dave Foley from Securian. At ICS, we're currently the investment consultant on a number of your plans. We're on the Health and Welfare Fund. We're on the HBC as well as on the HBA. Spencer, just turn up to the next page here. So really briefly, kind of talk about ICS. We're a consulting firm based out of Chicago. We strictly work with only institutional portfolios. So we have experience in not only defined contribution plans, but as well as pension funds, endowments, foundations, and health and welfare funds. When we opened our doors back in 2002, the one thing we really wanted to focus on is the fact that we want to make sure that all the advice that we provide to our clients were unbiased. And to ensure that we did that is that we have no affiliation with any broker dealers. We don't have any proprietary funds. All the advice that we provide is truly in the best interest of our clients. Go to the next page here. So we're going to start off talking about a traditional 401k plan. So right now, as it stands, the majority of 401ks are only really offered to larger employers. You can see here in this pie chart here that about employers that have more than 500 employees, roughly 92% of them offer a defined contribution plan to their employees. Employers that have less than 99 sees only about half of it. And the main reason behind that is the fact that, to have a traditional 401k, it's very expensive, time consuming, and there's a lot of compliance that's involved. So we go to the next page. What we did here was kind of outline all the responsibilities that come with a traditional 401k. So on the left-hand side, we have the plan sponsor. Typically, that's the employer who's offering the 401k to their employees. You are the named fiduciary. So in other words, if anything goes wrong, if you're not following all the ERISA law, at the end of the day, the employer is going to be held responsible legally and financially. As part of that role, the plan sponsor has to ensure that if they're going to be adding any professionals onto the 401k platform, whether it be the consultant, an administrator, or a record keeper, they need to make sure that they're continuously monitoring them to make sure they're doing their job correctly. Under the plan administrator or record keeper, usually there's something called the 316 fiduciary responsibility. I know some small employers that they may have a record keeper, but they're still holding on to responsibility as an administrator. So that's another layer of work that they have to deal with and more responsibility that they're taking on. And then the far right, you can see the investment consultant. Usually for smaller plans, there isn't an investment consultant. And so again, at the end of the day, the employer is the one who has the responsibility of picking the investment options that are going to be prudent enough for their employees. Everything I read on these three different lists are basically things that have been main topics of lawsuits over the past several years. And you can see here, there's a lot of things in red. And again, everything in yellow are all the legal responsibilities that the plan sponsor is taking on. So in other words, the employer, if it is not being outsourced to another organization. So going on to the following page. So not only is it really time consuming and there's a lot of responsibilities, it's also very expensive to open up a traditional 401k. Once you take into account record keeping costs, consulting costs, so it's just the overall fees of the investment structure. A total annual plan cost for someone just starting up, you're looking at about almost $4,000 or 4% of the assets in terms of fees. Turning to the next page. So what's the solution to this issue? So with the Secure Act that was passed a number of years ago, they included a provision that allowed for employers from various industries to come together to open up a 401k for their employees. They call it a pooled employer plan, or PEP for short. And the PEP really answers all the three main issues surrounding a traditional 401k. Number one, it's no longer time consuming because all the responsibilities that the employer had to take on is now outsourced to the plan sponsor of the PEP plan. With the HBA PEP, the plan sponsor is us, Investment Consulting Services. In addition to that, you see all the fiduciary responsibility also no longer falls on the employer. As the plan sponsor, ICS is the named fiduciary. Securian, as they're acting as the administrator and record keeper, they're acting as the 316 fiduciary. And then when it comes to the investments, once again, us, ICS, we're acting as the 338 investment consultant. So again, all the legal responsibilities is now outsourced to other professionals. And then the third main thing, it was very costly to open up a traditional 401k under a PEP plan. It's a lot less expensive, mainly due to the fact that there's various employers who are coming together and you're getting the economies of scale. So we switch to the next couple of pages here. So on this page here, we're going to outline the various options that if you decide to jump on board, what your employees are going to be able to do within the PEP plan. The first option they have is what we call full control. Just like any other traditional 401k, you have a list of investment options that they're going to be able to choose from and to create their own investment portfolio. All of these investments were vetted by my firm. We're continuously monitoring these managers. And if by any point they're starting to underperform, or we believe that they're no longer doing what we initially hired them to do, we do all the work in terms of replacing them. So you don't have to worry about doing that. Because that's one of the main lawsuits within traditional 401ks where employers didn't know they had to monitor the investment options. And when it comes too late, now they're hit with a lawsuit by their participants. Another thing you will see here is that we don't offer a whole bunch of options, and we do that by design. One of the main issues within traditional 401ks is that there's 56 different investment options. And a lot of people think that the more options you give an employee, the better off they are. And in reality, what happens is that you start confusing the participants. So we want to make sure that the options that we're offering them are limited so that if they choose each individual one, which is very common, they're still going to have a well-diversified portfolio. If you move on to page two, the next page. The second option we have is that we do also offer target date funds. And what we use is the Schwab ones. They're a low cost option with just 8 basis points. So that's 0.08% for an investment fee. And this is good for a participant who basically wants to set it and forget it. And the way that this works is that over time, the investment gets less aggressive as you're getting closer to your retirement date. So for instance, if you expect to retire, let's say 15 years from today, and in that case, you want to get something around the 2035 fund. So then as you start approaching that retirement date, the investment manager, which in this case is Schwab, they're already changing the asset allocation that's more appropriate for your for when you plan to retire. We go to the next page here. This here is kind of what is called the glide path. So here you can see here, again, the further off you are from your retirement date, the more aggressive it is, and you have more equity. And as you start approaching retirement, you get more bonds within your portfolio. So again, this is all done automatically so that the participant doesn't have to worry about doing it themselves. On the next page, what we showed here is the third option. This is something that we're currently working with Securian to add on to the platform. So from a lot of feedback we've been receiving, people are asking us, because we work on large pension funds and health and welfare funds, why can't we also offer the same services in terms that we control the asset allocation? So after further discussions internally, we decided to go ahead and offer that option. So what we're going to do is offer 3. One's we consider conservative, then another one moderate, and another one wants to get really aggressive with their portfolio. And what's going to be very unique with these three options is the fact that not only are we managing the asset allocation, but we're also be including other investments that may not be included on the initial lineup. And the reason why we're doing that is, again, we don't want to give too many options to the participants. It's going to confuse them. And there's also some investments out there that a little bit are too high risk. A good example would be global listed infrastructure. You know, that's a good place to be right now as energy is rising in costs. But maybe 2 years, 3 years down the road, we may not want to be in that asset class anymore. So within these three options, we're going to be controlling the asset allocation based on what's going on within the market, similar to what we do for our larger clients. Another question we've been asking is how is this going to be different from the Schwab target dates? With the Schwab target date, the main objective is to get less aggressive as you're approaching the day you're going to retire. These three options that we're going to be managing is good based on what's going on within the markets. So if you choose the very aggressive portfolio, whether you retire 20 years from today or you retire tomorrow, it's still going to be a very aggressive portfolio. So that's one thing you have to kind of keep in mind. These portfolios are going to be targeted more towards someone who wants to take advantage of what's going on in the market. Any questions so far for anyone? If we move on to the next page. So we show here is the investment lineup, excluding the three new funds that we'll be adding onto the platform. We show the expense ratios for all the investments across the board. Here you can see it's a very low fee structure. And again, we did that by design. Another thing I want to note here is that when we were partnering up with Securian, we wanted to make sure that they were fully transparent with their fees, just as we are with all our clients. And one thing that we asked them was if they're going to be crediting back any revenue sharing. So what that means to you as an employer and to your employees is that any revenue sharing that normally gets kept by either the consultant or the record keeper, it goes back to the participants. So for instance, if you look at the very first investment option, the Johnson Institutional Core Bond, you can see that has a fee of 0.25%. But you can see there's no revenue share, which is great. So at the end of the day, the participant is paying just 0.25%. But if you go down to, let's say, let's go down to the Coin and Steers Real Estate Fund. Here you can see it has an expense ratio of 1.13%, but there's a sub-TA and 12B1 fee of 0.45%. Typically, that 0.45% doesn't go back to the person who invested in this fund. It goes to the professionals, the consultant or the record keeper / administrator. We don't want to keep those fees. We believe that it should go back to the participant that generated that revenue. Therefore, that 0.45 goes back to the participant. And you can see the net fee is 0.68%. You're not paying the 1.13, which is traditionally what you would be paying if you went out on your own and got the investments. Another thing I want to note here is Securian does something very unique in terms of the international funds. When you invest in a fund internationally, there's something called foreign taxes that you pay. Well, a lot of times those foreign taxes get credited back to the record keepers, and Securian, again, well, because you want to be fully transparent just as we are, they don't keep that. It goes back to the participants as well. And you can see in some situation that helps you out a lot, such as the Fidelity Emerging Markets. The fee is 0.08, but you're getting back 0.13. So as of right now, you're actually getting money back as opposed to paying a fee for being that investment. Now, I don't know how long that's going to last, but again, that's one of the reasons why we partnered up with Securian with all those additional unique features that they're able to offer. Next page. So what we did here is kind of show you a comparison from if you went out and opened up your own 401k as opposed to joining the HBA 401k offering. So in this assumption here, we're assuming a brand new startup, so there's no money in the plan as of yet. It just had 2 employees. Based on this assumption, under the PEP plan, you're going to be paying about $4,200 per year. And that includes a one-time fee of $500 that goes to the HBA as a membership fee for joining the PEP plan. And that helps them cover the marketing costs and so forth. If you would have gone out and done a traditional 401k, you can see your startup cost would be roughly about $7,000. So, you know, $3,000 savings. It's not a huge savings, but it's definitely a savings you can see based on a percentage basis. And as your plan grows, again, the fees overall starts reducing because you're getting the economies of scale. Unlike in a traditional 401k, it's just you yourself. On the PEP plan, it's you plus the many other employers who are jumping on board under this program. Another thing to note is I'm not a CPA, but under the Secure Act, they are offering some tax credits to employers who currently do not have a 401k, but they do decide to open one up. One of those tax credits that you get up to $5,000 per year for the first 3 plan years to offset any of the startup costs. And then if you also add automatic enrollment, the government is giving you an additional $500 per year for the first 3 years. So again, I'm not a CPA, so that's something you have to talk to your accountant if you do qualify. But that's something to keep in mind because initially, if you do qualify for this, it already completely offsets the initial costs of joining the PEP plan. Any questions? Before I hand over to Dave, I do want to mention one more thing too. As you all know, the markets this year have not been very helpful. Things are down double digits. And I think one thing that a lot of employers may have concern or have a question about is, if I have a 401k today and I want to switch over to the PEP plan, isn't it right now the worst time to do it? Am I going to now have a realized loss as I'm selling out on an investment at a huge loss and then moving over to the PEP plan? Not really, because the end of the day, what's happening is that you're getting out from one investment and to another one. So when we do the transition between your current 401k to the new one, we do something called a map. Basically, what that means is if your participant or employee was in a S&P 500 index fund, when you map over to the PEP plan, we're mapping you over to another investment of the same investment objective, or something very similar to it. So really, it's a lateral movement. It's not like you're going to realize a huge loss and then keep buying in at a very low point. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind, that during the whole transition, the main goal with us, ICS, and with Security and with the HBA is to making sure that the transition goes smoothly and that we minimize the blackout period as much as possible. There's no questions. I'm going to hand it over to Dave.
All right. Am I on the camera?
You are on the camera.
Yeah, so to make sure I'm standing in the right spot.
Yeah. I'm gonna do this 1 second.
All right. We could probably go to slide number 3. We can start there. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dave Foley. I work for Securian. Just a little bit of background on us. We are located in St. Paul, Minnesota. Right. So I heard from my Uber driver today, it's about 3.5 hours, maybe, right, to St. Paul, to the Twin Cities. And that's where all of our service takes place. We have about 21 million customers, which means we're a pretty big firm. That means about like 1 out of every 17 Americans actually uses a product that Securian provides. The majority of our associates, about 6,500 of them, are in St. Paul. You know, we're a Fortune 500 company, but more importantly, we're a mutual company, which means, you know, just like Eric was mentioning about the stock market, right? That's, you know, investments, especially mutual funds, are buying individual stocks. And then when you buy a stock, you end up with ownership in a company, but that's not how our company works. We're actually private. And when you're mutual, it means that you're owned by your customers. So just like Eric had mentioned about how we handle our investments and, you know, we're always trying to do the right thing. That's kind of something that's that mutual companies are actually known for, right? Is putting the needs of our customers in front of our own, and how it's manifested itself in the retirement plan space is that we look at everything from a fiduciary lens. So if you hadn't heard the term, obviously business owners, you typically have fiduciary responsibility for your employees. That it's the highest legal standard. That's why I think, sometimes the government doesn't do a lot of great stuff. But what they did with the Secure Act and allowing us to do pooled employer plans is actually probably one of the best things they've ever done when it comes to helping small business owners provide a way for their employees to save for retirement. So next slide. So what are we known for? So not only are we known for that fiduciary stance, we're actually known for service. Plan Sponsor Magazine, which I know you guys all read, right? It's at the top of your reading list. But for people like myself and like Eric that specialize in the retirement plan space, it's the closest thing you have to Consumer Reports. So for retirement plans, we won 20 best in class cups. You get a cup for finishing in the top quartile for different things like website, phone service, how we handle administration, all those type of things. So 20 is a pretty big number, but more importantly, I'm more impressed by our net recommendation score. So, everybody that took the survey or asked, if somebody came to you and asked, would you be a reference for Securian? 83% of those, our customers said that they would, right? So I'm sure any business, if you live on referrals, that's a big deal, right? So the fact that our customers are willing to refer on behalf of Securian. So the next slide. We know that we live in a different age, right? So I see Spencer back here conducting his meeting on his computer. Yeah. I actually do a lot of meetings on my laptop, which, for most of your employees would probably have us living in the Stone Age, right? So most people are going to access their 401k information either through a tablet device or actually through their phone. So we're proud of these numbers. Delbar is actually a company that measures like customer service and more importantly, like web experience and online service. So we've got the #1 experience on online enrollment. That means if you decide to set up a 401k or if you move your 401k to Securian, your employees can actually enroll on their phone. If they are not that tech savvy, they can actually call into the call center and enroll by calling in to talk to one of our experienced account reps. Mobile experience, right? So we've got an app. If it's if it's important to you, the app is both in English and in Spanish. It's all great information, easy to use. I know that I use a particular bank that's big in Chicago, which is JP Morgan, the Chase Bank. I've not been in a Chase Bank in probably years, but I will never leave them because they have the easiest to use app. Like all the transactions and all the information can be done in a couple of clicks. And that's how we designed our mobile experience as well. And then for people that kind of old school, they like to read their statement, they're more engaged. They want to see how their account's doing. More importantly, they want to see what kind of income they're going to get in retirement. We're #4 when it comes to statements as well. So next slide. We retain customers, and that's a big deal. So these are the numbers for 2020. 2021 was actually closer to 99 than 98%. We keep clients on average for about 14 years. Which means that we're building long-term relationships with you. I mean, this could be the last decision that your company makes is to partner with Securian because the plan, even if you're a small plan just starting out or an existing plan that's growing, the products and services that we offer are completely scalable, right? So great retention with our customers. Next slide. All right, next one. All right. So this is because of ICS and their relationship with the HBA. They came to us, they put us through a rigorous RFP process in order to become their partner to provide this solution to you. So Eric had actually gone through all of this in terms of what roles and responsibilities, but just as a reminder, Securian actually would be the record keeper. As the employer, you would be adopting into that plan. It might also be referred to as a participating employer. And then Securian is going to take on, so Eric's team, they're the expert when it comes to investments. They're going to completely take on the fiduciary responsibility for selecting and monitoring investments for you. What we're going to do is not the most exciting stuff, like the investments, but probably the most important stuff, which is the day-to-day operation of your plan. I'll give you some examples on the next slide. Well, first of all, if you have a plan already, or if you're looking to set up a plan, for most small business owner, it's got to work for you, right? So we used to say the 3 R's. It's there to recruit, retain, and reward. So other programs, our competition, they're going to limit what you can do because they want to fit you into a box, right? To make it real easy for them to do the administration of the plan. We're going to give you complete flexibility, right? So if you want to put a match, great. If you want to do a profit sharing, fantastic. If you don't want to do any of those things and you want a deferral only, or your employees are just contributing, fantastic. You do automatic enrollment. You can determine your own eligibility, right? So if you've got to want people to work for you for a certain amount of time in order to become eligible for the plan, you can determine it. If you want to add vesting, where the employee has to work for a certain amount of time in order to accrue 100% of the contribution that you make on their behalf, it's great. And then if you want to offer loans, which I'll get into is a necessary evil, right, to have in retirement plans, because people need to be able to access know that they have access to their money in order to participate in the plan. So know that you have complete flexibility. Next slide. These are some of the things we're going to put some little guardrails on the plan, but these are decisions you don't want to make, right? Because a lot of times employers don't know how important these numbers are, these decisions are. Normal retirement age, we're going to put at 65. We'll allow for people to do Roth. So everybody's probably familiar with that. That's making an after-tax contribution to your 401k. I heard that the government is leaning towards allowing employers to match it as an after-tax, so business owners. So if you got a closely held business, or might be only family members, providing an after-tax employer contribution might be a great thing. Standard distribution options, we're going to use the total compensation, which my guess is that you won't care about, right? Using the definition of compensation, and then easy ways to clean out the plan for employees that no longer work at your company. So these are the ones we're going to streamline, but those are really not plan. Those are not plan design specific. These are really just kind of standard way for us to be able to process transactions. Next one. But here's where the rubber meets the road. These are the big ones. These are the ones that will distract your HR team, your office manager, you as the owner from focusing on your business. So I'm going to start with loans. So I mentioned loans being a necessary evil, but I can tell you there's a positive. Most people don't know about this, but if you got a young workforce, they can actually take a loan for a primary residence, right? So you've got standard, no provision loan, right? But then you can also take a loan for a down payment on a home, and actually you can amortize it for the length of your mortgage, right? So having it first-time home or primary residence, great reason to have a loan feature. But loans, typically what you have to do is you have to set them up on payroll. And then you got to deduct it from your employee's bank account. You got to make sure that the amortization schedule and the repayment schedule actually matches. The number one mistake that employers make, besides definition of compensation, is loans. We don't do it that way. They're actually deducted from your employee's bank account. So it's a great deal for you. You're not playing banker as a business owner. But more importantly, it's a great deal for your employee, because if they become separated from service, they can continue to repay the loan. So big deal. If you got some turnover, this is the number one issue with the Department of Labor. Is if you ever got a random audit, like a DOL guy's board, and you decide to stop by your business and says, hey, I looked at your tax filing, which, by the way, you won't have one in the old employer plan because there is only one. So they're never going to find you randomly. But if you did, they would ask you, how do you keep track of your terminated employees? You have to have a process. And actually, one of the things mentioned by the Department of Labor is if somebody had a 401k balance, they no longer work for you, you don't know their current address, that you're supposed to contact their beneficiaries and ask them where they are, right? It's crazy, right? So Securian does all that work for you. All return mail goes to wonderful St. Paul, Minnesota. We do all the lost employee searches. Distributions. There are some reasons why an employee can take a distribution from the 401k plan, and they have to do like death, disability, call it a hardship. They might get evicted, something like that. It's unpaid medical expenses. So a lot of times it's a really difficult conversation for an employee to have with an employer because they're afraid, right? That you're gonna think something different of them or, judge them. Plus sometimes there's owners that don't want to get that deep in their employees' business. So Securian handles all that for you. Somebody wants to take a distribution in order to be qualified, they're gonna talk directly to our account reps to determine that. And then the lovely IRS and the Department of Labor has all these notices that you're required to give your employees at certain times of the year. There's different dates and different requirements for all of them. Securian can handle all the notices at no additional cost. Right, so it's a big deal keeping you compliant because again, I doubt you'd ever get individually audited because there's no tax filing under our arrangement. Is that they'll ask for a list. So if you currently have a plan, that's a single employer plan, not in a pooled arrangement like HBA is offering with the help of ICS, is that they might ask you for a list of all your notices. When did you send them and who did you send them to? Wouldn't you rather say, that's a great question, you should call Securian because they have that on record. So outsourcing the day-to-day administrative functions, taking on the fiduciary responsibility for it. Securian is partnering with ICS and HBA. ICS is technically the plan sponsor. So all your fiduciary responsibility is outsourced. All the day-to-day administration is outsourced, and we're all taking. So if you never had a plan, you could argue that you never had fiduciary responsibility. Because it's always started with the arrangement with the HBA. Next slide. That's a little more. Couple things that we can offer. I'm going to focus on the two at the top. The third one is an add-on, the benefit add that costs money. So if you ever want to talk about that, Eric and I are more than happy to have that conversation offline. But two things we offer for free. Are through Enrich and LifeWorks. So Enrich is an online financial wellness program. Basically, it's anything from debt management to college planning. It's more for the do-it-themselvers, like employees that like to stay engaged. I'll use this as an example. I think I mentioned it last time because it's true. It's like Amazon and Netflix combined. So it's like Amazon because it uses artificial intelligence about like what you're looking at to kind of cull information. And then it's like Netflix in terms of like it provides content, right? So if you're looking to reduce debt, it'll give you worksheets. It will give you a step-by-step program. And then like, I don't know if you guys get emails, if you have Netflix and emails like, hey, Dave Foley, we found a movie that we think you should that you would like. They do the same type of communication. Like it will email you and say, hey, you're this far along in this process. It's time for you to check back in, right? So great resource. So if I'm looking to recruit employees, you can say through your arrangement with the HBA and ICS, and you've got like an Indeed post, or maybe do you guys post jobs online for HBA sometimes for employers?
Yep.
Right. So you can actually list it out that you have a 401k plan and you have a financial wellness program as part of it. And then you can also say you have an employee assistance program. So LifeWorks, it's a Fortune 500 benefit. Like, don't discount this. It's a Cadillac. It is financial, legal, and grief and like substance abuse counseling. That's available for free, either online or over the phone. You can go online and create a will, a trust, power of attorney, rental agreements if you own rental property. So it's a lot of great things to support your employees. Never been more important than during COVID. So I say this with all sincerity. I had an organization in Wisconsin that dealt with people that were challenged, right? So like they would help people get to work and things like that. A lot of their employees, or a lot of their customers or clients, used to be part of the Wisconsin healthcare system, were dying during COVID, and their employees were grief stricken. Like their employees were losing their mind over the amount of death that they were experiencing. And I got a call from the HR team said, I discounted LifeWorks. It's fantastic because you can have unlimited conversations with licensed clinicians. So it's a big deal. And then we also have just all the resources that are available through the website. So next one. If you want to take a tour, right? So I'll offer you this up. If you look up in the upper left-hand corner, it says RPDEMO1 and then 70774. So if you text RPDEMO1 to 70774, you're gonna actually get a response from Securian. It's just, believe me, I'm not gonna hound you. It's just a one-time text, right? I know it's election season and you're probably getting texts like crazy. But it will be a one-time text. You click on it, and if you click on the participant, it will actually give you the app to look and the feel. You know, you don't need a username, you don't need a password. You can go on and experience the websites. And if you're the primary employer, it actually will give you the employer website. Just keep in mind too, on the employer website, you're never going there to do transactions, right? You're really just going there for information. So look at the first slide, or the first page is great. If you have an existing plan, Eric stole my thunder about conversions, because that's the #1 objection right now is, am I selling low? If we map a retirement plan, if you have one already, if we map it over, you're out of the market for 24 hours, right? So you're back into it with a like investment. It doesn't mean that the blackouts lifted, right? So there's something called a blackout in a 401k plan. It just means your employees don't have access. It doesn't mean that their money's not invested. We're just still reconciling assets. So I'll use like a primary example, like Alaris is close to here, right? So say your retirement plan is with Alaris, is they need time where there's no transactions so they can actually reconcile records. So they might shut your plan off 5 days before it comes to Securian. It comes to us, wire records. We invest it the next day, so the money's invested. We just need, on average, it's less than 5 days, just to make sure everybody's account is set up right. And then we flip the switch and you're back on inside the website. So it's 10 days typically for a blackout, but 5 of them is on the other side, 5 on our side, money's still invested, right? So it makes sense. Yeah, I'll pause there for any questions. So I think about it that, so the group that we hired to consult with us when we rolled out this solution and made it available to firms like Eric is the 2 most famous ERISA attorneys in the country. You can Google them, Fred Reich, if you want to bore yourself, right? There's other better things to Google, but Fred Reich and Brad Campbell. And they both commented, if this, so most of the growth in the 401k space, especially in the small plan market, has been over the last 20 years. So that's when most small businesses started ramping up. If this existed 20 years ago, nobody would have a single employer plan. Because why would you want the risk, right? I know Eric focused on the costs. That's important, right? Keeping your costs low. But the government's giving you wonderful tax credits to kind of handle that. Your biggest issue is the risk associated with that. Not only the risk of fiduciary, right, which is your personal assets at risk, but the risk of making a mistake, the risk of not being able to focus entirely on your business, right, which is where most of your wealth is going to be built. It's removing those obstacles that keep your company from being productive while still offering a wonderful benefit where you can do the 3 R's, which is recruit, retain, reward. So we'll be around, you know, if anybody has any questions, you know, feel free to start with Spencer and, you know, he can route it to the appropriate party. But we're excited about this. And just so you know, it doesn't sound like a huge number, but we've only been doing this for 1.5 years. If you count all the employers that we've managed to go into a pooled employer plan like our arrangement with HBA and ICS, it's almost 200 in 1.5 years. So it is what small business owners are preferring as a solution. It's almost 50% of all our new businesses is companies joining a plan like this because reduce cost, reduce administration, and risk transfer. So, well, thank you. Oh, if you Google, last thing, if you Google, we did make, sorry. If you do Google Securian, we are combining organizations, right? So we entered into an agreement to combine with a company called The Standard. We are basically the same product. So it was always kind of a joke in our industry that if we were competing, we're selling the exact same thing. So we are going to combine. The name will change to The Standard. It will take about 24 months for that transaction to fully take place, but we'll just combine platforms, which means you're just going to get the best of both worlds. You're going to have we're going to take what they do well and what we do well and put them together. So it's only going to enhance the solution that we're offering today. Thanks.
There's a couple more slides, but are we done?
Oh, pricing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go through pricing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pricing, like Eric mentioned, the pricing is competitive, but I think this is what's more important. You are not subsidizing somebody else's plan, right? And some of these arrangements, a lot of my competition, you know, their team can go out there and hand you one sheet and say, oh, well, you've got no money, it's a startup, here's your fee. That sounds great, right? That's easy to understand, but it potentially makes you a target. It makes the whole pooled and plan target because the Department of Labor hates subsidization. That's why they attacked our industry, and they have been, and that's why the lawyers have been attacking our industry for years, is they don't like people overpaying for services. So if you have 10 plans or 10 people in a startup, your fees are going to be X. If you have $1 million and you had a plan for 10 years, it will be X, right? So you're only going to pay, you are not helping subsidize and pay for somebody else's plan, which I think is important. Because long-term subsidization could be an issue. And it's one thing that I think if that was going on, my guess is that Eric's firm wouldn't have partnered with us and neither would HBA if they would have known that there was subsidization going on. So it's not happening. So. All right. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Any questions online? You guys gotta want to chime in with anything?
Now, if your company has a plan today, we're more than happy to do a free benchmark to show you what it would cost. No obligation. You're not wasting our time. It's actually part of your fiduciary responsibility to kick tires on alternatives. You know, every 3 to 4 years, you should be doing it. You know, at minimum, you can say, hey, this doesn't work for us, and you put it in your file. And if an employee asks you, say, oh, no, we looked at other options and we're staying with what we got.
Okay.
We're happy to do that as, you know, part of the services.
Excellent. You do?
Yeah.
Jack, for recording? Are they good ones?
I don't know.
Let's find out.
Not usually dumb question.
There are.
So how long has the PEP or since the Secure Act, how long has this been a thing?
First, yeah.
Okay, so we literally started this year. HBA staff, their 401k, were the first ones to jump on board. That went live in, correct me around, beginning of June.
Yeah.
And then we have 2 other employers who will be starting the first week of November.
Yeah.
So really, since June, basically, we
Okay.
went live. Yeah.
But like nationally, other companies or other firms, is it, I don't know when the Secure
So
Act.
yeah, Secure Act, it passed in 2019, but I think it went live in 2020, right? 21?
21. So they passed it at the end of 2019. They gave the industry a year to respond. And then PEPs went live. The idea of a full employer plan went live on January 1st of 2021, but nobody was really ready to go right then. So we started partnering with companies in June of 2021. So really in less than a year and a half, we've had 200 employers join full employer plans. But it did something amazing. So prior to the Secure Act, if we would have set up this plan, one of the employers or even HBA would have had to take all the risk prior to, so that, you know, associations were kind of afraid of that, which I agree, right? And then if you had an employer join the group that didn't follow the rules, he could disqualify the whole thing. So the government said, okay, we got to remove all the scary things about these arrangements. So they removed that responsibility where experts can be the plan sponsor. And then they don't have a bad apple spoils the bunch rule, right? So if somebody's not doing what they need to do, we can just kick them out. Right.
So if we're joined, we're not technically at risk by way of others in the plan. Is there?
Right.
Is there an amount of participants required or
Yeah.
is there any, I guess, concerns over how many join, how many stay in, numbers wise? How does that affect pricing? How does it affect membership?
Yeah.
What happens there?
Yeah. So typically we need $50,000 in annual contributions. It's really like 35, but don't tell them I told you that, right? We'll let smaller groups join, but if you think about it this way, on average, if you look at your total payroll, and did 9%, that would be the typical flows without an employer contribution. Right. So if you're like saying, would we hit 35 a year? And we give you, like, if you joined in January, February of 2023, we'll give you all of 2023 and all of 2024 to hit any minimums. And if you don't hit the minimum, they just charge you a little bit extra. Like, we don't tell you to go somewhere else. Right. They just have to get to a minimum number on it. Yeah, just like if you had a job that, you know, your estimate was a little bit off and you need to ask for a little bit more.
But I mean, as far as
Maybe the contractors are different in Chicago.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, it's gonna be.
Yeah. Stability of this program and if we were to consider enrolling, I mean, and probably likely to do the benchmark and have a look at where we have one currently with Empower.
Yeah.
To see where we're at, but you know, jumping into it, if I guess what's the you know, you guys aren't gonna go away, or if there's not enough people in the program, I guess that's more so what I'm asking if.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere. So like we're combining with the standard. The Securian's been doing retirement plans since 1930. So we have that, and the combination, all of our employees are going into, so we have 300 and something, they have 300 and something. So we're gonna be like 600 employees. Half of the employees will remain in St. Paul, Minnesota. You know, doing the servicing. You'll still have so we're not going anywhere. Right?
And the HBA is on the plan too, so
Yeah.
I guess if the HBA goes away, maybe, then
Yeah.
you guys can just partner with you guys instead of just us. Yeah.
I think there's always going to be, and there's going to continue to be consolidation in our industry. So there's going to be, you know, record keepers that will disappear. Like you're with a record keeper that's going nowhere either, right? And either are we, right? Like Empower's huge.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like, I mean, the biggest difference we like to say is that, you know, not necessarily against Empower, but it's the people, it's the process, it's the structure. I mean, those are the real differences in terms of what you probably have today. Like you're going to have experienced account rep, you know, I think she's been here for 27 years. I mean, so yeah. All right. So,
Which would bring up another question, just like point of contact, then how does that funnel and how do we, as far as employers go, how does that work and how does that look?
investments.
Yeah, so I'll be the main point of contact. So if you're interested, we'll definitely start with the benchmarking report. We can show you what you're paying right now, what you have. We just give you a card.
Yeah.
We'll give you, Dave will also be on that call with me to handle the more administrative side of it. And then if you decide to move forward, I'm always gonna be there. I'm involved in all the communications between you as the employer and between Securian. But then Securian kind of takes over with all the paperwork and the onboarding. But again, throughout the whole process, even afterwards, if there's any issues or anything, I'm available and I'll be there to kick down the door in case Securian is not doing what they promised. But I've known them for a while and I've had no issues whatsoever.
Yeah, and you have a dedicated account manager. He'll be like the for day-to-day questions, like, hey, I got somebody coming into my office, they want a loan, or how do you do payroll again? This is their first time. You know, so those are experienced professionals. You'll have name, number, extension, email address. Yeah, because currently with Empower, do you use a TPA or like a third-party administrator, or is it bundled?
Yeah, I think it's TSC or how, it's that third party.
In St.
A
Paul?
lot of paperwork. We just did ownership transfer with them too, so filled out a lot of those documents lately, which is a big scary
I know.
fiduciary duty, so it's.
I know Matthew Slider, the other. Yeah. I've known Slider for a while.
Then how about, again, like, how do you guys, if you were to transfer over, then the, to become permanent or some employees that left and still have functions, does that roll over and that becomes part of your structure then?
Yeah, it rolls over. So anything over, so assets are always supported for pricing. So anything under $1,000 will cash out eventually. You won't have to make that decision. We'll do that for you. Anything between $1,000 to $4,999, we've got a low-cost IRA rollover product for them, and gets communicated to the employee We tell them that they're gonna do it. Anything over 5,000, we'll let stay. The reason why most employers try to kick out those $5,000 balances is because they're like, employee left on bad terms, something like that. Like, I just don't want to deal with them anymore. You won't deal with them, right? So we'll deal directly with those employees, but let their assets sit because, the odds are that somebody with $5,000, they have very few options except do it themselves when it comes to investments because there's not a lot of advisors that want to work with, people with that balance. And it might be cheaper to maintain it in the plan. So you're still looking out for them by letting those assets sit. Plus, they're going to have the expertise of, Eric's investment option because the default is the moderate, right?
Oh, the default rate's the Schwab.
No, it's rough. So we're going to put them in a good fund that these guys prudently selected. There's a million target date funds out there and they selected Schwab for a reason. So the people's going to be well invested. And I'd rather have them make their own decision about what to do with those assets than us just taking them out. And the government's going to encourage, they are encouraging. I don't know if you try to do a rollover lately, your advisor's probably, threw like 70 pages of paperwork at you now because they have the conflicts of interest. I mean, the government's kind of encouraging, like eventually 401k plans are going to be from accumulation to death, right? Because you're going to start seeing annuities and income streams, like turning your 401k into a defined benefit plan once you decide to retire. That's coming. And it's coming quick. But it's a good thing to benchmark your plan because at minimum, you say, hey, we looked, we're fine, right? Somebody else calls you and says, hey, I want to look at your 401k. Say, hey, did we just do it? We're good. So kind of you're handling your fiduciary responsibility by doing it.
And then one of the employers are going to be jumping on board. Well, actually, they'll be finalized in November. They had Empower. So I work with Empower, some more larger firms, so I know the ins and outs. And yeah, I think at least the benchmark, or at least you have a full understanding of what you're paying, what you're getting for that price.